Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to another Taco Tuesday, but with whiskey instead. So always fun to be back on a Tuesday night. I'll tell you, these weeks go by fast when it comes to Tuesdays. So I know work and stuff never generally goes this fast, but it seems like every Tuesday kind of creeps up on me for the most part. So today will be kind of interesting. I wasn't sure if I was going to really have much, but I was actually kind of reading through a one of the newest whiskey advocate magazines, and it kind of got me thinking about just, I guess, the whiskey magazines in general, and kind of your thoughts on those overall. And it's kind of one of those things where I think as the younger generation come up, they're not even going to really you know be used to having, printed materials for the most part, I guess, when it comes to subscriptions and things like that. But, it's still kind of fun to thumb through some of those things and, read some of the articles and just still have something a little bit tangible. But, I kind of got to thinking with, really all of just the different articles and things going on within the whiskey world, are whiskey magazines, still very like viable? Do people still kind of want them for not only the articles, but some of their whiskeys of the year, things along those lines? So it's kind of always an interesting, I guess, perspective from that standpoint. So I figured I'd kind of throw that out there to all of you, just to see exactly your thoughts on these magazines. The one I got tonight obviously is the Whiskey Advocate. I've had Bourbon Plus before, but I just found myself just kind of setting the things aside and not reading them. But I've kind of, as of the last, maybe I'll say the beginning of the year, started kind of just paying a little bit more attention to them, and not really focusing on so much, their top list, just more of some of the odd things for the most part. So as I was going through, the magazine the past couple of days, it kind of brought up a few like interesting kind of topics that I'll throw out there for you. And one of the ones that they really highlighted, specifically in the spring 2025 release or magazine, was basically highlighting the craft distillers, the ones that were kind of here before the boom, and then now the ones that are after the boom. So we'll get into that in a little bit here. But first, let me say hi to a few people that were in here a little early. Top Dog, good to see you, Johnny. Appreciate that. Sugar Kitty, as always, good to see you too. Mr. Brandon Warman, good to see you, buddy. Sugar Kitty, I think I already said hi to you, but we'll say hi to you again. Mr. Hinson, good to see you, brother. Hopefully you're doing well down there in good old sunshine state of Florida. So there's another sunshine guy. Mr. Roy R is walking, so good that you're out walking. Maybe a cocktail or two when you get back home. So Forlorn Hope, good to see you, buddy. Mr. Wayne Arnold, good to see you too, buddy. There's whiskey magazines. Yes, there's still a few whiskey magazines out there. Mr. Ben Dramming, how are you doing, Benny? Good to see you as always. Dr. Robert, good to see you, bud. Nice to have you tonight. So, Mr. Ray, good to see you as well. Appreciate you jumping in tonight. So I'm sure everybody will get notified, and Marty and Gary, they're over there blabbing away on their channel. So I'm sure they'll have some fun stuff between the two of those jokesters tonight. So anyway, thanks everybody for joining tonight. So I greatly appreciate it. So as I had mentioned before, you know what, let's do this. So before we get going, as I'd like to do, I'm just sipping on our newest pick, shameless plug right now. This is going to be the Flux Capacitor 2 from Backbone. It's a blend of 3 different things between, I shouldn't say blend. So it's all straight bourbon, then blended in 3 different finishing casks, Amaro, rum, and port, I believe. So, and I'm letting this thing open. I've been letting it open now for about maybe 20 minutes. And there's so much maple syrup coming off this thing. It's crazy. But anyway, for the Mash and Journey Whiskey Club, we'll be releasing that on Friday. So I've put out some notices for that as well. But figured I'd crack open that bottle tonight and sip on that while we're going through some of this stuff. So Joey B, how you doing, brother? Good to see you as well. So, all right. So as I was going through the magazine, and again, before we go again a little bit further, put in the comments. I'm always interested to see and hear what you guys are sipping on and why. This is always kind of an interesting thing with my lives being Tuesday, more at the beginning of the week. It's always interesting to kind of see the perspective of what people kind of will be sipping on, tonight being a Tuesday. We still have a little bit of the weekend or a little bit of the week to go. So, let me know your what you're sipping on tonight. I'm always interested to see maybe what a Tuesday night pour looks like for a lot of you guys. So, but anyway, so as I had mentioned before, as I was going through, one of the big articles was, as they kind of titled it, "After the Craft Revolution," was something. I mean, I had talked about this in even a while back, and it had a lot to do with the craft distillers that kind of started, I'll say basically a decade ago. So those that were early or before the kind of boom really got going, there are obviously some who've lasted, quite a few who haven't, but really the article had a lot to do with the fact that a lot of these craft distilleries have now kind of been here, 8, 10 years, whatever it may be, and have some really nice, aged whiskeys. We're all kind of reaping the benefit of them lasting through kind of that boom. But this is the interesting thing is, do we still consider some of these distilleries? And again, off the top of my head, you still think of, like in my state, Dripless Glen, things along those lines. All of these others that started out, approximately 10 years ago. Cedar Ridge was another one that kind of started a little while ago, but again, right around or right before that boom. But they've all kind of outlasted it. And I think now with them kind of putting out a lot of really, really good whiskeys, it's allowed us to kind of, be rewarded with those whiskeys. So that was kind of an interesting article. And again, it really talked a lot about, the good ones have all kind of survived again, that big boom, and then now kind of a little bit of the downfall. And we're kind of in that, feel like we're coming out of that a little bit, but it's one of those things where, we still think and we still use that term a lot, craft distillers. But, there's a lot of them that have been out there now for, 10 years, and we're getting really, really good whiskeys. So that was kind of an interesting thing that they had talked about. So, and I kind of always have and will have a little bit of a soft spot for the craft distillers, because when I first started the channel, basically back in, I'll say 2017, 2016, 17, something like that, where, at that point it was just, everything was new, still new to me as well. But when I was kind of like, reaching out and just trying to get a feel for what the industry kind of was, and if they wanted a what I thought was review at the time, which, I mean, some of those things are god awful, but, they probably were looking at it from a standpoint of, there was somebody who was willing to talk about their whiskeys. And again, back then, those things were super young. They may have been, and some of them less than a year, definitely a lot of them less than 2 years, but it was a fun introduction. So for me to kind of get my feet wet in that world early on, I thought was a really kind of fun, thing for me and hopefully for them. But it really kind of let me get an early kind of insight as to, what some of those whiskeys were. And now kind of thinking back, there were a lot of them that still were not great. Even the good ones that are now, we all know, like, there's not very much really good, 2-year whiskey. So, but that's what a lot of it was. But now we've gone all the way through, and now here we are, 10 years later, approximately. And we've got, some really, really good, I guess what we'll still call craft distillery whiskeys and stuff. On the front of this magazine, well, I'll show you this. So these are some of the whiskeys that they kind of listed. So I thought it was kind of interesting that they had, a few of those, but those were the ones that they were just kind of, highlighting on here. They've got Boulder and Dry Fly, Westward, Willard's Trail, McCarthy's, which I don't even know what that is. What is that? Aged in Oregon oak. All right, maybe that was the one somebody was talking about the other day. Then they had Stranahan's and Cedar Ridge. So I thought it was kind of interesting that they had, some of those that they were on there. So all right, let's see what's everybody sipping on. So let's see. Sipping on some Special K. There you go. Making room for the new Russells coming in. There you go. All right, like that. Mr. Walt, good to see you, buddy. All right, Wayne, what do you got here? It's a little Bardstown original. Original Bardstown Origin High Wheat. One of my new favorite filters. Okay. What's up, Eric? Good to see you, brother. Mr. Wiley, I'm guessing guessing you're probably sipping on a little oh my God, Fiddler or something like that. That seems to be the go-to. But all right, what do you got here? So what do you mean craft doing 2-year whiskeys? Jim Beam released a 2-year whiskey for $80. Oh yeah, that we won't talk about that. I wouldn't lump that in even with craft distillers these days. Fortunately, not many of them are putting any of that stuff out anymore. So they know. I think we're way beyond that, and there really haven't been, I guess, for the most part, that many newish distillers that are distilling their own stuff that's still that young that they're now introducing to the market that I can think of. If there are, and I'm missing something, put it in the chat. I'd love to know or hear if there's some of these new distilleries that are coming aboard that are distilling their own stuff and releasing it at 2 years old. I'm always willing to try things just to kind of see. It'll give you a little indication of maybe where they're going with things, but you can never have too high of expectations with a 2-year whiskey. So I don't. All right, well, look at the jokes. I don't drink on a weekday. Only the times ending in day I thought is when you drink. But all right, that's cool if that's the case. All right, sipping on an NBC 8-year single barrel. Cool. I like to hear that. 401, what do you got? My concern with the young generation going away from alcohols in general and the collectors slowing their buying. Will craft whiskey go the way of craft beer? You know what? They did address that in the article. And I would say, I mean, if you guys see the new Whiskey Advocate Spring 25 release, it's probably one of the better ones. It had some really good articles in it, I'll say, that were definitely worth reading. So they had kind of addressed a little bit of that regarding that. And it seems like with them, kind of what they were reflecting on or talking about was the fact that a lot of them have made it this far, that now the ones that have really kind of continuously been making and kind of putting out better whiskey for the most part, that they're reaping the benefits. We're reaping the reward of all of that kind of combo. So it didn't seem like they were really talking about them going anywhere, that as long as they've kind of been able to survive a little bit of, everything prior, just the expense of all of that, whether or not people were buying their whiskeys. And if people weren't, they were kind of forced to close, which did happen to quite a few of them. But for the ones that have stuck around and have really kind of continuously, been really trying to put out good whiskey for several years, that now we're being kind of rewarded with some of that stuff. You see it with, some Cedar Ridge, and again, Driftless Glen, what do we think? Corbin Cash, places that, that we've never really even had heard of prior, to a few years ago. But now with everything aging up anyway, it was kind of interesting, but it doesn't seem like the craft distillers are going anywhere, especially the ones that started and have kind of, defeated everything that was thrown at them. They seem to be here to stay, which I'm really happy to see. So that'll allow us to really get a chance to watch and taste the evolution of a lot of these kind of smaller brands. Now, the ones that you kind of that I'm talking about are the ones for the most part that are doing their own distillation, not really doing, sourcing now. Maybe they did early on, but really for the most part, the ones that are doing their own distillation, which, you've got to give a lot of them a lot of credit. There's a lot of cost and expense to all that, but it was good to see. Um, it was good to see just an article that was focusing a lot on the craft distillers and them, being the ones that made it through are now kind of, being rewarded. So, Katie, thank you. I appreciate it. I'm waiting for my coffee. I think it'll be here. I think either Thursday or Friday, but I'm looking forward to some good Drifting Drams coffee. So that's for sure. But let's see what else we got. So then we had kind of jumped into, we'll get into a couple other things before, but this is kind of, again, a little bit on topic as well. They kind of got into whiskey bars, and only when I'm kind of doing some traveling or whatever do I find myself in more whiskey bars for the most part. But this was kind of an interesting thing. They were focusing and highlighting a few of them around the country, but this would be kind of fun to hear from a lot of you. Do you have kind of a favorite whiskey bar? If so, again, put it in the comments. I think it'll be interesting to kind of see, obviously where everybody is from, maybe what the name of that actual whiskey, bar is, and really to you, what makes it, I guess, a really good whiskey bar. For me, I guess what I'll say is it doesn't have to have like everything that's top notch, from a whiskey standpoint. Now, with that being said, oftentimes when I'm looking for a good whiskey bar, I'm really looking for more of the environment. So I like it when it's kind of that, kind of dark and like lots of leather and all that kind of very, old school lounge kind of. There's just something cool about sitting around um and having a whiskey like in a room that's like that. To me, it's inviting, it's comfortable, and you can have some good conversations. Now, if you can find like a cigar lounge that's similar to that, I know my buddy Dave in just a little bit outside of Cincinnati, Ohio, just started one, a cigar lounge. I believe they have whiskey and all that. I've not been yet, but called Creekside. And if anybody is in that Cincinnati area, go there. Tell him I sent you, and I'm sure he'll appreciate that. I'm looking forward to going at some point, hopefully pretty soon. But it looks incredible, and I'm sure, knowing him, that they've really done a fantastic job. So that's for me what makes a really good whiskey bar is more of the environment than it is just the whiskeys. But again, oftentimes when you get into those kind of places, they're going to have a lot of those whiskeys for, you hope that they're not, overly expensive, but it can oftentimes, end up like that. But, to each their own. If you're willing to spend a lot of money on pours of whiskey, that's fine as well. So, let me go back here real quick. So nobody's buying things on secondary market as much as anymore, but flippers are still lining up at the stores. Curious how things will go. Yeah, I think we'll start to see a look. There are going to be those. I just wonder if some of the flippers have kind of gone maybe down a little bit, and now those are more either newer people or people that are just excited for those releases. I don't know if that's the case or not, but I've kind of heard the same thing as well, that most of the time, there's a lot of the flippers and stuff that are there. But yeah, you also see a lot of that secondary market that just doesn't seem to be quite as active as it used to, that people just are not willing to spend those, those kind of prices for whiskeys and stuff for the most part anymore. So, let's see what else we got here. Yeah, looking forward to the backbone. I think everybody's going to like it. This Katie and you and Ethan and everybody else, whoever gets this, you'll have to let me know that I think it's going to be a great. I think it's going to be a great cigar pairing type of whiskey. It's got those big, bold, heavy fruits and some chocolates, things like that. That'll hold up really well to a cigar. So I'll be interested to hear your thoughts once everybody gets that. So, what do we got here? Adam, what was PC? Is that I don't know if that was Pensacola or what that was, but again, it doesn't have to be a great whiskey bar or anything. I mean, I guess just even a place that you enjoy, you know, frequenting or something that has, just what it is that you're looking for. So, all right, Nicholas, Hammer and Quill in South Bend, Indiana, great prices and selection. The drinks are top notch. Can't go wrong with that. I mean, it sounds just about perfect. So when you can find a place like that, those are the kind of places I enjoy as well. So, sounds like a 1980s play. Yeah, what call? I don't know. Like I wasn't in a lounge in the 80s. I was still a young kid in the 80s. So, but yeah, I guess we can kind of go with that. I guess I'll call it like maybe like even the you'll get like some of these old school like kind of older steakhouses kind of vibe. I guess I'll say as well. So I don't know, but all right, Jeff, what do you got in San Francisco? Elixir is my favorite dive bar, and the Rick House for the fancy experience. All right, cool. And again, I think it's good to have those kinds of places. You know where you can go for just something easy, quick, whether it's pours or cocktails or food or whatever it may be, and then you've got the maybe a little more upscale type of places. So those are always fun as well. So. Um, so Nashville Maxes, I've definitely seen the Buffalo Trace core products go down in secondary prices and more. Thank God. So it's one of those things that it needed to be done for Buffalo Trace. I think they were resting on their laurels for quite some time, and people were just paying astronomical, crazy prices for even those things like they're the Weller single barrels, like I mean 6, 7, $800 for those things. Like that's ridiculous. Panama City, sorry. Um, nobody should ever be paying those kind of prices for that kind of whiskey, period. So um cheers, Tom. Good to see you. Thanks for joining. Appreciate it. What do we got here? So Ben says, don't really drink whiskey when I go out unless I sneak it in. It costs too much. And I have to drink beer at the Kirby Ice House here in H-Town Central for all my okay. And I'm kind of the same way too. If I'm not going to be drinking whiskey, I may just have a beer or two. As much whiskey as I'll say I'll drink or a lot of us drink. It's nice to just have a beer once in a while. So, man, I can't stress enough how much I endorse that statement right there. Nothing like a good old supper club in Wisconsin. It is a thing here on Fridays and Saturday nights where people hit the supper clubs, and they've got its own kind of drink, the supper club old fashioned, which in our state will basically never be whiskey. It'll always be brandy. So, but if you want whiskey, you can order it. But if you order an old fashioned, they're just going to give you Corbel, and then everything else that comes in an old fashioned. That's what it will be. But it's a they're great places to be. The food's good. The drinks are often the drink. It's a fun experience. And there's a lot of people that I kind of take it for granted, but there's a lot of people who are not used to these kinds of supper clubs that we have in the state of Wisconsin. And honestly, most of the good ones are more, northwest type of areas, but you can get some great food, and oftentimes it's a lot of food, and usually Saturday nights they'll have prime rib and lots of supper club old fashions, and they're a little bit on the sweet side, but they're crushable. I think that's the whole plan with them. But I'll say if you've never experienced a good supper club, get to Wisconsin, get up north, and give myself or Forlorn a jingle, or reach out, and we could probably give you some recommendations for things. So I'm interested in your take about the light. Yeah, that was a cool one too. So I've got that one highlighted here, and we'll kind of get into that here in a second. So JG, good to see you, buddy. Let's see. Yeah, they're just a super cool environment. Oftentimes they're just old. They're kind of dark. They're not old like dirty or nasty. They're very like family inviting. They're just in an inviting kind of place oftentimes. So No, it's not what we call an old folks home. Now, with that being said, oftentimes there will be the early birds, of course, in a good old supper club, but uh, it ranges for everybody. But they're usually the food is priced well. The cocktails aren't too bad, depending on where you go, and if you get a little bit more on the outskirts and you're not like in one of the touristy areas, you can get some really really good deals on not only the meals but the cocktails as well. So I mean, they're the type of places you can stay at for quite some time. I'll say that. So Jay, you and Krista come by us. We'll take you to a good supper club. Okay. What the hell's a supper? You just it's just hard. You gotta, if you can think of old, like oftentimes a more of a kind of dark kind of Italian like steakhouse. That's oftentimes what you'll get with a good supper club. It kind of has the same feel or same vibes as well. But you get the supper club old fashions again with brandy here in Wisconsin, but they're super crushable. You have, Friday nights fish fry is big here. So you're kind of combining all these things. And again, it's just a very family oriented thing. Not that everyone's sitting around kind of, talking to everybody, but it's just a fun environment. And it's something that is, if you've never been, you have to go to one at some point. So definitely blue play. There's it's not gonna be anything like that. But yeah, a lot of them will be close to like some lakes or rivers, things along those lines. Then again, that's as you get a little bit further, north and northwest. And again, when you get into those kind of areas in Wisconsin, you're getting into kind of God's country for the most part. But you'll get some absolutely fantastic places. Now, they're not all the same. There are some that are definitely worthy of going to, but yeah, it's a very very fun experience. And again, if you've never been and you're coming through the state of Wisconsin, definitely give it a try. I know they'll talk a little bit about it in Minnesota as well, which they can be kind of close, but supper clubs seem to be a Wisconsin thing for sure. So I don't know. I don't have dentures. I'm sure the people that are there early for the early birds, maybe that's something that they have to factor in, but I wouldn't know. So, all right, here's one other quick one, that an article that we'll kind of get on to a couple of the other things. But is there anybody in here? I don't, but is there anybody in here who has any or some or a whiskey insured? I used to do insurance, back in the day. And I dealt with a lot of those kinds of things now from a little bit different in terms of what I dealt with. But I was always curious whether or not anybody has or had a whiskey ever insured. And if so, what that kind of process was like, if you ever had to, um, address anything from an insurance standpoint. I just thought it was kind of an interesting perspective, because me being formerly in the insurance world, I never did any of that. So what I should have done is drank one and then filed a claim for the the bottle leaking or something. But I'm sure there's a bunch of other, you know, policy language and all that good stuff that would apply to that. But I thought it was interesting. But I wasn't sure if anybody ever, had anything insured or knew of anybody insured. So, but cheers, guys. I appreciate everybody for joining tonight. Man, that thing is fruity and chocolate. It is a lot of maple, a lot of this like chocolate covered raisin. It's very rich, fantastic spice. This is 115.2 proof, fantastic proof on this thing. I think we've got some 8 and 9 year old bourbons mixed in there with like a 6 year old bourbon, something like that. Then it's a rum, amaro, and port, I believe, is what the three were, all kind of in different finishing casks at some point, then blended in a final cask. So we're excuse me, whoa, we're looking forward to that thing being released on Friday. But Look at that color on that thing. I mean, it is dark. And I'll say this about it. It is not it's got some barrel, finish and finishing notes to it, but it's not just completely taking over. Like it's going to be a little bit on the sweeter side, of course. But if you're a cigar person at all, this will be something that will be absolutely fantastic to pair a cigar with, or kind of just one of those whiskeys that if you enjoy a really, really nice finish on something. And we had a lot of these things that day. I think we had like 17 different whiskeys throughout the day, and this and our other straight bourbon were the two that really stood out to us the most. So, okay, what do we got here? I knocked my front tooth out last weekend, and they had to re-cement my veneer. Insurance doesn't nice. All right, that doesn't sound like all right. That wasn't the type of insurance I was talking about, Adam. But hopefully you're doing okay. So it's going to be a pretty Tom. It'll be a really, really fantastic whiskey, especially for those that enjoy a really unique finish. And again, this is Flux Capacitor 2. We did one of these about 2 years ago that everybody really enjoyed. We don't have a lot of bottles. I think there's sub 100 bottles of this. Unfortunately, there weren't that many. I know on the bottle it says 147, but it was a misprint. It never ended up being that many. We verified with Backbone and shared pour. So thanks for the denture story. I appreciate that. So, all right, so let's move on to, there was another article. Let's see, what was that? Where was that? It was interesting. And it was kind of talking about light whiskey. Where was that? Oh, it's page 30. Let's go back. This was a really fun article, because I think oftentimes light whiskeys get kind of a bad rap. Like it's kind of a bad name, I think, for what it is, because it's anything but light. Oftentimes it's high age, high proof, a lot of times a lot of corn, a lot of them will be 99.1, things along those lines. So it's oftentimes a very different mash bill, but they can have a lot of the same properties or characteristics of higher aged bourbons. It's basically the same. Oftentimes they're aged in used like bourbon casks, but aged for a lot of years. And again, obviously the distillation, being, extremely high or above the threshold to then be considered a bourbon, is where it will then fall into that light whiskey category. But, with some of the light whiskeys, honestly, I think they can be as good, if not better, than a lot of bourbons that are out there. So if you can get really good aged, light whiskeys, do not sleep on some of those. Like I've had some absolutely incredible ones, recently. I think what it is that kind of like, Dan and Sean have done with their brand, and they've had some light whiskeys, which one of them was a pick that we did. Again, I mean, it was a big, bold, rich whiskey that you could call it a bourbon or very similar to one, but it had all those properties. You wouldn't know that it was a light whiskey, so to speak. So anyway, they identified 7 light whiskeys to consider. There were only actually 2 that were on here that I had never heard of. But it was kind of interesting. They started out with, they gave them like all this 90-point scale was part of this article, and all of them are at least 90. There's a couple that are 92, but the first one that they had, and again, you guys can let me know if you've heard of any of these things or not. But the first one was Austin 121 cast strength, $94. I don't know what that is. I don't know if that is a Texas light whiskey or what. I don't remember seeing, actually, did I read what that was? Oh, I probably do. I just don't remember. But anyway, the first one was Austin 121. If you know what that is, let me know. Then we had King's Family Distillery 17-year-old single barrel select, 67.5% ABV, $100. You're getting a really old whiskey for, again, at $100. Like in today's day and age, that's a pretty darn good deal. And you're going to get a full-bodied whiskey, that's for sure. Penelope 17-year-old was on there. Again, another one for $100. Here was that Austin 101 on here again. Basically a 102 proof for $50. I don't know the age or anything on that one. And then speaking of Backbone, Backbone and their triple down single barrel was on here as well. That one was very interesting. It was kind of a cool whiskey, different blends and all of that, but it was a very, very cool. They said single barrel on here, but the one I had was blends of some different light whiskeys and stuff. But again, here's some of the notes that they're kind of indicating for the Backbone triple down. Cherries and raspberries, saltwater taffy, vanilla almond ice cream. I mean, who doesn't like that? So yeah, Jeff, I mean, some of these things can be absolutely amazing. So they didn't have anything from Copper Sky. I don't know if maybe that's something by you, but then one of the other ones they had on here was Jacob's Pardon 18-year-old recipe number 3 small batch. This is $200, but basically 142 proof. Jacob's Pardon. I'm not really sure what that one is, but that was really that and the Austin were the two that I was kind of a little bit unfamiliar with. And then the final one was the Rye 3, 14-year-old private reserve cast strength single barrels, basically 130 proof for $90. So the most expensive one that was on here from a light whiskey standpoint, being 18 years old, was $195, but that was at Jacob's Pardon 18-year-old. So, so interesting. I think it's an interesting category, and I mean, a lot of the ones I've had and have are absolutely fantastic. So I would say if there's one category, maybe even two, I guess I'll say, because we'll talk about one other one before too much longer. But from a light whiskey standpoint, I would say it is one to definitely not like sleep on. Don't think of it as light. Don't think of it as I mean, I would think of it as bourbon like, just without the bourbon classification, because oftentimes you'll get, maybe light whiskeys can be a little bit fruitier sometime, but again, they'll have those big, bold, heavy flavors that great bourbons can. So, do not sleep on a really good light whiskey. And if you see them and you're kind of curious about it, I'd say buy it, give it a try. It's probably one of the more affordable, aged, high proof whiskeys that are out there, if not the best value from an age and proof standpoint. So they can be absolutely fantastic. So what else we got here? What's up, Chris? Good to see you, buddy. So I guess talking about light whiskeys, I guess let me know. I know a couple of guys, Jeff, and if everybody have thrown a few things in there about some stuff, but let me know your thoughts overall on light whiskeys, your experiences, maybe some suggestions, things that you enjoy from a light whiskey standpoint. Again, it's always fun for anybody who's watching the replay and watching the chat to kind of put all of these things together, suggestions, whatever it may be. But again, I think if you can list like whatever that brand or the bottle, whatever that is, maybe it's age, price, things along those lines, what it is you enjoy. I think it's always a big help for, when people are coming back to watch these things. So yeah, they definitely can be for sure, especially if you start getting into a few of those older casks that have a little bit more of an oak profile. I think you start to get a little bit of that old whiskey kind of feel, which oftentimes comes with, as we all have, know Dusties will have a lot of those those butterscotch kind of vibes. So I think with those ages and that kind of oak profile, oftentimes you'll get a little bit of that butterscotch. A little parched. Let's see. No, Nicholas, but man, I'll tell you what, it sounds good. Do we know the price on the 20-year seal box light whiskey? Kind of interested to know that. I definitely wouldn't consider it a diet whiskey. That's for sure, because a lot of times, cheese, the light whiskeys can be a lot of proof and a lot of sweet richness and stuff. So it becomes one of those, sometimes it can feel a little bit desserty because of what that is. So Jacob's pardon is MGP, which thanks, Doc. I think a lot of these older like light whiskeys and stuff, honestly, are all coming from, not all, but the vast majority of them have come from, MGP, just because it was that older stock that they've had sitting for years and years that nobody really ever wanted for quite some time, which oftentimes we'll see not labeled as light whiskey. We'll just see something like American whiskey, which I know, Old Carter had their American whiskeys, which was like a 99.1 mash bill. But some of those things were absolutely fantastic, incredible whiskeys. So that's why I'm kind of saying that maybe even still that the light whiskey category is maybe still the most underrated. I'll get into kind of American single malts here in a second. But if we're talking about like true light whiskeys, man, oh man, I'll tell you, they can be absolutely amazing. So, man, John, I'll tell you what, get you and Renee get a nice bottle of some light whiskey and give it a try. I think you'll both enjoy it. And if you don't enjoy it, give it to Renee. She'll put it and make it a fancy cocktail or something. That's for sure. But I would find it, I'd be surprised if you didn't enjoy it. The only thing I think that can be oftentimes a little bit much from a light whiskey standpoint is they can be very, very high in proof. And admittedly, when they get super high, I'm not a huge fan of that, because I don't like to focus on so much of that kind of heat or ethanol. So that's the one thing with light whiskeys for me that can be slightly off-putting. So, never have had it, but heard good things about the Obtaining light whiskey. Yeah, I think what, oh my God, I just forgot his name. Someone help me out. My God, I don't know. I can't even think of his name right now. Who owns Obtainium. Let's see. So yes, this is exactly what I was talking about, Nicholas, was the Evernorth light whiskey that we, American whiskey, whatever you want to call it. Just, it is an absolutely amazing whiskey. And for like whatever that price was, $65-$70, something like that, it's unbeatable. And again, it's sneaky. I know that the buzzword is always bourbon, and everybody, wants to gravitate towards that. That's why I'm always reluctant to say light whiskey, because I think there's still enough people that don't understand enough about what it is and some of those kind of characteristics of a light whiskey. But when you say American whiskey, oftentimes people have this kind of conception for like what, or perception for what that may be. So it can be odd. It's the same exact thing, but a lot of times we just refer to a lot of the light whiskeys as just American whiskey, and people get it a little bit confused. But again, I know exactly what you mean, Nicholas, and they can be absolute, flavor monsters. That's for sure. So $200. So, it's, I don't know. I mean, it's probably a little steep. I know people pay $200 for a great bourbon. So again, if you're willing to spend $200, I guess I'll just say on great bourbon, well, there you go. And there's another great, call it American whiskey, whatever you want to, call it or classify it as, you can. So let's see. Oh, interesting. All right. Well, I'll be interested to hear your thoughts, Nicholas, when the light whiskey, the seal box one comes in. So sounds like it might be a good one. And I think that one had some age. What do you say, like 18 or 19 years old, something along those lines? So all right, Wayne. So when I bring my aged light whiskey to our bottle shares, they usually get ignored. They do because people are just. I still think it's just a category that people are just not aware of what that stuff really even is oftentimes. So I think when people see light whiskey, it's still kind of a category that people just don't understand enough about what it is and what those whiskeys really can be. They're overlooking oftentimes some of the best whiskey that could be out there on the market. So I wouldn't tell anybody to shy away from a good light whiskey because they can be absolutely amazing. Mm. All right, what do we got? Whiskey habit. I find that bourbon lovers tend to love light whiskeys, but if you're a fan of rye or high rye, the light whiskey is missing that spice. You know what? They can, and again, I'll agree with you from a standpoint. Oftentimes, they are a little bit of a sweeter from a sweeter side of things. But the one thing I think that helps to ramp up a light whiskey is oftentimes the proof. So you may not get that spice, but you're getting that good old Kentucky hug. So, if you kind of put those two together, maybe there's a little bit of an offset when you're missing some of the spice with some of the proof. So maybe that's a little bit of a substitute. But again, I still think it's one of those categories that just enough people are just not familiar. Thanks, Gene. My God. Thank you, Jay. Speaking of that, I think we probably need to reach out to Gene and see about doing something for the club. I know he always has interesting things. And again, he's a real whiskey enthusiast, so he wants kind of cool things. So I'll have to reach out to Gene and see about maybe doing something for the club. So I think that's why I always yeah, it is. And admittedly, John, I'm not the biggest fan of the high proof ones. I just hate having to focus so much on the proof dominating the flavor profile of things. Like I don't mind some proofier whiskeys, but man, when you get into those 130s, 140s, and sometimes those things will be upwards of 150 plus proof, like that's just too much. I just don't want that much. I just don't want that much proof in a whiskey oftentimes. So I've always just assumed people contributed the word light with less flavor. Yeah, and maybe that is part of it. And it's just a bad like terminology. And again, I wish I knew more about why it's actually called like light whiskey. I know someone's told me before and I've looked at it, but I don't remember exactly why they classify it as light whiskey, which I think just again, it's a bad interpretation because generally speaking, everybody, when you hear the word light, you think of less for the most part, less flavor, less everything. And it's just a bad name or a bad whatever whiskey category, whatever you want to call it. So, it's one of those things where, and again, to each their own. If people are proof monsters and they like all of that stuff and they enjoy that, it's just not necessarily my thing. I'll have it on a rare occasion, but it is not something that I necessarily seek out. It just they can be very good. Don't get me wrong, but it's just it can be a lot. Yeah, like Jay says, a lot of times they're very high corn. I mean, 99% oftentimes, and like a percentage of malted barley. So it's, yeah, I know they were there to kind of compete with with vodka back in the day, but man, I mean, it just seems like a bad kind of like to try to get people who are drinking vodka to then want your light whiskey and it be kind of the complete opposite for the most part. Like I just never understood other than from a naming standpoint to try to get people to drink light whiskey, but I don't know. Yeah, definitely distilled at the higher proof. I know that. So so it's distilled at a higher proof and aged. And yep, I know all that because of the used barrels. It's lighter in color, so the term okay, well maybe I don't remember exactly the definition, but yeah, I know really. I mean, if it was distilled at less than 160, you could still and if it was new barrels, it's then bourbon. I mean, you go one proof point higher and put it in a used barrel, even though it's still a bourbon mash bill, it's no longer technically speaking a bourbon. But so, those things will kind of offset that a little bit. And again, I know used barrels are oftentimes just like Scotch, them using a lot of the old bourbon barrels. You have to age these things longer in order to get more characteristics to come out of that whiskey. So I don't know. I just think they're still so vastly underrated that they just still get, so overlooked by an awful lot of people. And I would be all in favor of them just not even putting light whiskey on the label, just call it American whiskey and let people figure it out. If you want to put the mash bill on there of 99.1 or any other, whatever it is, however you want to define it, I'd be cool with that. But I just think a lot of people shy away from light whiskey because of the name. I think they're just not aware enough of what the light whiskeys are technically. So it's called light whiskey because of the lighter flavor and color. Man, I don't know. Maybe back in the day it was like lighter in flavor and lighter in color. And I suppose that's probably what it was when they first started kind of producing some of these things. They probably had a lot of those kind of more sweet grain, kind of floral, fruity notes that maybe that was what they were trying to do to compete with the, like the clear spirits back in the, probably would have been the maybe late 70s and 80s, something along those lines. So, let's see. Yes, it went nowhere. That's why you see the high age. Yeah, exactly. It did. I mean, nobody bought the stuff. I mean, clearly it fell flat, and now you've got all of that whiskey that's now aged, and there's a lot of them that are out there that are now 20 plus years. So you go back to when they were trying to kind of compete with the clear spirits, and that was the whiskey market's attempt to compete with that. And yeah, I'd say it pretty much fell flat for a lot of years, and now we're getting the opportunity to try some of those things. So yep, exactly. So man, those, again, you take those proofs and you throw those things even in a used barrel. I mean, they still have retained so much of that proof that they just became, well, maybe back in the day, higher proof, younger whiskeys for the most part. That, I mean, if you were trying to compete with a clear spirits, maybe that was their thing, was the proof on those, and maybe some of the flavors that people were getting from those. But man, I mean, hell, some of those things were 150 proof. They were almost twice as high as what a lot of the vodkas and stuff were that were out there. So what's up, Paulie Pete? Good to see you. SVP, good to see you, brother. 2026, not 2025. All right, Steve, if with that bold statement, what's 2025 the year of? I'll be interested to hear. I'm thinking 2025 in all honesty is going to start to be a little bit of a rebound in the whiskey market. I think we're already starting to kind of see a little bit more, enthusiasm, people a little bit more excited. I still think people are going to be budget, conscious for the most part. But if there's things that a lot of times what we all want is not a need thing anymore within this kind of like niche that we are, this all becomes a want for us. But, for the most part, again, the downside is, so many whiskeys being on the shelves. However, I still think there's going to be a lot of people that just gravitate towards, what it is that they enjoy, whatever that price point is. But again, I do think, people still this year will be a little bit aware or conscious of, what it is they're spending their money on. So, again, with that being said, that's always, you know, um, something to kind of just be aware of. I mean, even if I go, I mean, most of the time I'm not buying a lot of whiskeys for the most part, other than doing for reviews and things. But having so much whiskey, and sipping on so many things, even having a lot of people over, it doesn't even put a dent in anything. So it's fun to have different, things and a variety of whiskeys, and really the thing I enjoy the most is just watching other people enjoy different things, and for whatever those reasons are, even more so than just me. But I still absolutely love great whiskeys, and that's not going away anytime soon. So I'm always looking forward to. I'm just not always willing to pay the big, huge, crazy prices. Never really been a secondary guy, but to each their own. If you want to get stuff, and there are times you have to go to secondary to get anything. So, um, 2025. So, this must be the optimism coming out in Polly P. So 2025, the year of closures, cutbacks, and high age stated releases. So, and maybe some of that will still be the case. I know they have done some of that stuff here in 2025, and maybe I'm being more optimistic than I should be, but I'm hoping that things start to kind of change a little bit. It does kind of seem to be changing a little bit. Definitely doesn't seem like it was in, part of 2023, all of 2024. At least things seem to be kind of getting a little bit better. I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe it's just my optimism for wanting things to kind of, continue to be, I guess, on the upswing. So, all right, what do you got here, Robbie? So I see much less interest in allocated product, not as many people waiting in line. People are putting their money into. Yeah, and again, I have always thought that, again, not because Jason and I run a whiskey club, but even from my standpoint of just the unwillingness to stand in line for what I think is a lot of just kind of okay whiskeys. Now, again, they're going to come with the big popular ones are going to come with the big, price tags. They're going to be difficult to get, so, to Rob's point, if people can get, I guess, in my opinion, a lot of other great whiskeys that you can't just go to the distillery or go to the store and get, you're still at least getting things that are different. I don't want to say unique necessarily, but again, like Rob was part of the pick that we did here for the backbone. This thing's just, it's got, great bourbons, great finishes. You're not just going to get those things for the most part, anywhere. So I would agree from that standpoint is being, and again, it doesn't matter what the club is, but just getting things that those guys or ladies are doing. They're interesting to whatever that club may be and the people that support that and want those whiskeys. So I would agree from that standpoint of that being kind of a fun thing, because you are getting things that are a little bit different. There's a little bit more, you're a little bit more invested in the whole entire thing too, because you're a part of whatever that club may be. So, more for real, and that's fair. That's fair. We'll call you a realist. We'll call you a realist. Um, So Tom says, I have seen a softening of people prices and some whiskeys, including Buffalo Trace. Definitely, I would agree. I've seen so many bizarre finishes coming out in 2020. Finishing is far from dead. Seems to be just getting started. Yeah, I still always think there's going to be a category for finished whiskeys. There's people that just enjoy. Here's what I'll say about finished whiskeys is I think the vast majority of people enjoy whiskeys that have a sweeter profile. Whether it has some spice and all these other things, but just like anything, you can oftentimes sell sweetness. And I mean from a taste standpoint, that just resonates with an awful lot of people. So, when you have some of these whiskeys that have a little bit of a sweetness to them, it's what a lot of people, enjoy in my opinion. So, this brings up a great question, Scott. How many Eagle Rare do you have to own before you stop buying them at $38? I feel like you can't say no at MSRP. You know what? I mean, that's a good question. I mean, at $38, again, it's one of those whiskeys that if you can get those, you don't mind drinking them. 90 proof, you don't have to think about what it is. It's an easy proof to kind of sip on. It's not going to blow you away. May have a good little profile to it. So yeah, I mean, at $38, if you can get those often, you can kind of just use that as almost like your daily sipper. I think when you get into that kind of price range, 90 proof, that becomes like just a good, weekly type of bourbon. So yeah, I mean, if I saw one at $38, I'd probably buy it, to be honest. I would have no problem with that. It's something you can drink, fairly quickly with friends, whatever, and you're not worried about breaking the bank. So good question. Let's see. Tom says the exception being Buffalo Trace and Eagle Rare, which are double what I was paying this time last year. Oh, interesting. Even Buffalo Trace, just the standard Buffalo Trace and Eagle Rare double. We don't get a lot of either one of them around here, so I don't really have a good base for that. But I've seen some of I thought when I was in Florida, 3 weeks or a month or so ago, whatever it was, I thought I saw like a 175 of Buffalo Trace for like $45. I don't know if that even sounds right or not. Maybe $50. I don't know, something like that. But I was thinking, I'm like, man, that doesn't seem too bad for a 175, but I don't know. Let's see what else we got. So, what's up, Johnny? The Old Carter American whiskeys were some of them. They were pretty fantastic. Which was, if you want to call it, I mean, it was light whiskey. I mean, that's what it was. We just knew it as Old Carter American whiskey. But yeah, to that point, there you go. There's a perfect example of not calling those American whiskeys light whiskeys. They called it American whiskey, and people ate that stuff up. So you could never find any of those. And to be honest, it's some of the best American whiskeys, light whiskeys that I've ever had. So the reason some of the Buffalo Trace secondary prices is softening is because they are doubling the MSRP on some things. Yeah, I mean, and for Buffalo Trace, I mean, it just seems like a bad thing. Like of all times, now you're gonna make like let's just call it a $750, a Buffalo Trace that used to be, let's call it $25. Now you're gonna sell it for $50. I don't understand oftentimes what it is that some of these brands are thinking. Like, why sell that for $50? They don't need to. They're already so massive. They can produce so much of that stuff. They don't have to sell that stuff for $50. And if it's a greed thing, then I guess shame on them. But it's not a great time, I would say, to be charging double the price for Buffalo Trace. It's not worth that kind of price. Not a $750 for $50. It's not, period. So Dr. Robert, so what do we got? So based on many newer special releases with realistic MSRP from several distilleries recently, I share your optimism. All right. I kind of have narrowed down the finishes I like, and I'm not interested in trying new finishes. Okay. All right. And that's fine. I mean, hey, to each their own. So Appreciate that. Let's see. So in New York, I see Buffalo Trace for, oh my God, 45 to 70 bucks. I mean, 45 would be the max I would ever pay for just standard Buffalo Trace. It is not that. So Eagle Rare sits on the shelves in Georgia at 40 bucks. Personally, Russell's 10 is way better than Eagle Rare. Interesting. Yeah, I'd probably lump those two kind of together a little bit. But man, to be honest, it's been a while since I've even had a pour of Eagle Rare. I'd have to almost do them side by side. But it would be a fun video to do, and I think I did one years and years ago. But not enough people can even find Eagle Rare to even compare with Russell's 10. And again, like Russell's 10 is a great everyday bourbon for whatever 30 bucks. You can't go wrong with that. And it's really what Eagle Rare, Buffalo Trace, all of that stuff should be. It should be everywhere. It should be on the shelves. To me, it's a huge mistake by Buffalo Trace to just allocate a lot of that to a few of these states. It should be, and it ultimately could be on shelves everywhere. But I don't know. I don't understand Buffalo Trace and their marketing and all of that stuff very often anyway. So I don't know. But Adam says, I'd buy it at 38 bucks, but definitely not worth my time waiting. No, for sure. If I was maybe at Buffalo Trace and it was a day they were releasing, Eagle Rare, fine. I'd buy a bottle for 38 bucks. I'm sure as hell not standing in line for, there's nothing that Buffalo Trace would release, maybe outside of some of the straight from the barrels, things like that, that would be, to me, E.H. Taylor barrel proofs, maybe some of those would be worth waiting around a little bit, but I'm not waiting that long. I can tell you that. I don't have enough patience for that stuff. So, Jeff says, bought some Buffalo Trace for 23 bucks. Fine. Cool. No problem whatsoever. And there are states that the stuff just sits around everywhere. So, I saw a handle of Weller Special Reserve. That's crazy. That's like, forget that guy. 90 proof bourbon for 400 bucks. Like, that's ridiculous. Like, who in their right mind would even do that? So, all right. But question is, if Eagle Rare is on the shelf everywhere, do they change the name to Eagle Pretty Available? I like that. Look at here. We got jokes now. So be here all week, folks. Wayne says, I work at the Reserva Room in, I'm assuming, Bowling Green, Kentucky, and we sell the Buffalo Trace liter bottles for under 40 bucks. Because we are a bar store, we can sell the liter bottles. Oh, cool. I mean, at under 40 bucks for a liter, cool. I'm probably fine with that. I have no issue with that. So, all right, final thing for the night is they've kind of started talking a little bit more again about American single malts. Are we ever going to really truly gravitate towards American single malts? I think there's still a lot of people who enjoy them. I just think for what it is, I think we've seen exactly what it is. I don't think it's going to be something that people go crazy about. I don't think it's something that's going to get totally forgotten. I think it's just there, and where it is right now, I just don't see it being that much bigger of a category. I know they just went through recently all the classifications of getting all of the definitions of American single malt and all that, and I'm sure that will probably help a little bit. I don't know if it helps the masses enough to care about exactly what it truly is. I think it's one of those things where it just kind of is what it is. I just don't know if it's ever going to get to that point where it overtakes. Like, it's taken this long for, I think, for a lot of people to gravitate towards rye whiskey. Like, when we first started the club, nobody wanted rye whiskey. People maybe would have it in cocktails. Nobody wanted it to sip on. It's gradually and slowly become a little bit more popular, because I think of just some of the brands that have introduced really, really good rye whiskeys, which really has helped that category. But man, American single malt, man, that's just a big leap. I mean, with it being, malted barley, maybe if you're a Scotch fan or you enjoy that kind of profile, but they're opposite ends of the spectrum. It's just something completely different. So it's just one of those things that is going to be, I still think, I don't want to say flat or stagnant. I just think it is what it is, and it's its own category for right now. And I think it's probably going to be that way going into the future. Now, they did highlight in the article some stuff from Cedar Ridge and the Quintessential and what Murphy Quint is doing with that brand and those whiskeys in particular. That stuff is amazing. That's a different category of, I guess I'll say, American single malt. I'm sure there can be some great ones out there, but still, unless you're able to taste that, people are going to lump it all together. It's kind of like the light whiskey. People don't know enough about it to just not know whether they like it or not. It's just one of those categories where I think it's going to be a very difficult type of thing to introduce to the American palate, I'll say. So I think a lot of times people enjoy bourbons and ryes, because maybe they're not Scotch fans. I know there's carryover and all that. So, but I think people have, favorites or preferences. So if you're more of a Scotch person, maybe you'll enjoy American single malts. Even though when we were at Cedar Ridge not long ago, Murphy had said, that I think the original kind of thing was that for people that were into Scotch, that the American single malt would then kind of be just another, big category, but it never really took off, even with the Scotch drinkers, from what they've seen. So it's kind of just stayed its own category, and it is what it is. So, um, let's see. All right, let me go back here. So, yeah, so I think, this is kind of one of those things. American single malt owns its own category. I know, Steve. No. All right. Um, American single malt. American single malt was a bridge to bourbon since I started with Irish and Scotch. Okay. All right. So now, Jay, have you with starting with all of those? I'm assuming you've probably gravitated more towards the bourbons and ryes for the most part. I'm sure you still enjoy those other things, but I'm guessing maybe you've kind of um crossed the bridge on some of that stuff, so to speak. Mr. Reese, good to see you, buddy. Tom says American single malts for me have been unexciting. Maybe with finishes, I can see. Yeah, that's about the only thing I've ever had that have been like halfway decent. But admittedly, I'm just not a huge just malted barley fan within like whiskeys. I mean, I'm not a Scotch guy at all. American single malts, it depends on really what it is. I know when we were again at Cedar Ridge, Jay was there, Roger was there. Those were some amazing things. For those to get lumped into an American single malt category is a bit unfair for what that is because of how amazing some of those are. But I get it. Like it's just a category that just is just kind of it's just there for the most part. So let's see. So Roger says, love single malt, sipping old line finished in Sautern's cask right now. All right, cool. And again, to each their own. I mean, this is the cool part. And again, I just wanted to wrap it up with the kind of the American single malt and just kind of get your perspective on where some of those things are and kind of, your either, love or hate or love-hate relationship with an American single malt. So Adam says, if there's a single malt that gets the sky, yeah, there's not gonna be a lot of them. I will say the Americans or the quintessential stuff. I mean, it is amazing what Murphy is doing, his passion. What we're gonna do before we actually release those two picks from Cedar Ridge is we'll have Murphy on and just let him share like his passion and excitement for what all of that stuff is. And that will help kind of tie a little bit of that together. And I will say, if you've not had one or you're going to take a little bit of a leap, give this quintessential a try. It is unlike maybe anything you've ever have had, and it's just an absolute monster of a whiskey. Period. So if there are not many that I would give like that kind of endorsement to, but I'll tell you what. And Adam said it, like it is one of those things that I would be 100% willing to put my kind of stamp of approval on. So yeah, because most of them are just not my thing for the most part. So what's up, Josh? Good to see you. So all right, so here we go. Distribution is strange. It's everywhere in Cali, Walmart, grocery stores, always ever. I wouldn't buy for, I'm assuming we're probably talking about Buffalo Trace at that point. Probably a little bit behind too. Jay says I have 80% bourbons and rye in my bar. All right. Tells me a lot. Ethan says people like new things, may have taken a while, but American single malt should be a bigger sell in the next few years. All right, interesting. It'll be interesting just to kind of see. I don't know if I agree with that or not, just because of it seemed like it's been around still for a while and it's just never kind of gone anywhere from the whiskey side of things. So yes, I did. I absolutely loved it. I was pushing so hard for the ASW, that Red X, and that thing was crazy. It was probably, in all honesty, and William knows this, when we were there, I wanted that thing maybe the most. It seemed like it was just an extremely, extremely rich one. So are there some that I would be really willing to endorse or really enjoy? Yes, it probably just takes the right one. But yeah, that Red X from ASW was actually ridiculous. Top Jimmy, what's up, brother? Let's see. Corvette Trey. I'm assuming all the Marty guys are over here. So is Marty and the franchise, are those two done yapping away or tasting whiskeys or whatever they were doing over there? So looked like they had some samples and stuff to go through. So, but two good dudes right there, that's for sure. So welcome, boys. Let's see. Yeah, they had some amazing stuff. They had some absolutely amazing stuff. So let's see, what do we got? Yeah, I'm kind of in the same category. It would have to be, to me, something pretty special that really stands out and is pretty darn unique. So CA Scotty says, I don't think American single malts are like Scotch. I like both, but American single malts is more like a barrel aged stout. All right, I don't even know how to necessarily. I gotta try to like dissect a little bit of that. I don't think American single malts are like Scotch. And again, I don't have much of a basis for Scotch, so I don't know when you say that what that means. I probably have too narrow of a perception from the standpoint of just wanting to call it malted barley, and it's just, for me, most of the time a flavor profile that I'm not crazy of or crazy about, just kind of on its own. I know you'll have sherry finishes and things along those lines, but the vast majority of them that I've had, I've just not been overly crazy about. So, what's up, Richie? Good to see you, brother. Cheers, Scott and Whiskey Friends. Just got home receiving the OGD. Okay, cool. Oh, revisiting. Okay. I think it's a fun little whiskey, man. I know it's not worth the $200, but it's still a fun whiskey. I think it's got a slightly dusty kind of profile that at least makes it kind of palatable at 100 proof. So, but yeah, the price point on it's not good. I have an Evernorth Bourbon Junkies pick, and it was surprising how good it was. Not ethanol forward, and exactly. So I mean, it was the same way what we had. If you're talking about the one we did, I don't know if that's the one you're talking about or not, but yeah, incredible light whiskey or American whiskey, same thing. So, might get my wife to drink whiskey if they taste like a barrel aged stout. Yeah, It can be tough. Well, that was the same thing with mine too. She originally wasn't that crazy about it, a lot of the whiskeys, but now she'll drink a lot of, admittedly, I don't think she likes a lot of the ones with big high proof or anything to them. So, but yeah, she enjoys a few whiskeys, that's for sure. So, all right, Scotty, let's see what we got. So most of the ASMs, at least the Pacific Northwest, come for beer makers and they use new oak. Scotch is typically used oak barrels in a climate that makes much longer for the wood. That makes sense. Kind of an interesting perspective right there. That's for sure. John said, I would love to have a great ASM, but it hasn't happened yet for me. Most dog shit scotches kick the hell out of most American single malt. I'm looking forward to the M&J release. Yeah, that thing, John, is going to be, that thing is an absolute beast of a whiskey. I think most people will probably enjoy it. You know, you just have to get past the fact that again, it's not bourbon, it's not rye, it's going to have its own, different profile. But man, the passion that Murphy Quint has for his quintessentials, especially the cast strength ones, are absolutely crazy. So what's up, Andrew? Good to see you, buddy. Hopefully you're doing well. So here's a fellow Foregate fan right here. So I'm hoping things kind of turn around a little bit. I mean, Bill and Bobby are good friends, and you hate to kind of see at least the whiskey market the way it is, where I'm sure it's probably killing them from that standpoint. But you hope it turns around for them from a personal standpoint, just to get them back on the radar with things. I mean, they do some absolutely incredible stuff. So, um, Roger says to CA Scotty, agree. Westward, McCarthy. I've heard of some of the McCarthy stuff. People have been kind of floating that name around. What was that? Did I see that before? Where was that? I think I showed most of you guys this before. Man, I don't remember where I found it, but was this the? Yeah, and again, if you see, yeah, McCarthy's, there it was. So that was the one I was kind of wondering. And people have been talking a little bit about it, but yeah, the one that's closer to the Stranahan's, but the McCarthy's is one that I think has gotten quite a bit of quite a bit of attention lately. So I do like the bottle, kind of old school looking. It does look more scotchy than anything. Oregon single malt whiskey, Oloroso cask finish, aged 6 years. I feel like I'd want more age on single malts though. I don't know if I do, or I'm just thinking that I want that, or if that's a good age or what. But I feel like more age would add to the complexity to some single malts in my opinion. But I don't know. I could be wrong. I'm not exactly sure what it is that I like about them or what I don't like about them. But most of the time for me, it's just purely um the malted barley part of it. If it becomes too much, it just becomes a little off-putting for me. So, uh, thanks, Doc. Appreciate it. Really enjoy this, especially the light whiskey discussion, which I was hoping for. Gonna sign off. All right. Good evening. Have a good evening. Thanks, bud. Um, Yeah, I've been hearing about some of these things. I don't know what the price point is or anything like that. If anybody knows of one that I can maybe get my hands on, let me know. Maybe it would be worth, kind of giving a try to. It might be a fun video to do from more of a bourbon lovers like kind of perspective. And maybe I could spin it like that way. But I've been hearing a lot about the McCarthy's. You know, I don't know. I don't want to have high expectations or anything like that, but it might be worth doing, a video on just from a bourbon perspective, bourbon lover perspective, something like that. But oh, that sounds good. Cognac finish. I love a good cognac finish on things. Damn. That might be pretty good. I wonder how a little bit of that kind of earthiness would go with an ASM. Because I mean, I absolutely love like cognac and bourbons and even ryes. It's probably one of my favorite, if not my favorite finish. You just don't find enough of them that are done well enough. That's always the problem. That's one of the reasons why we've really struggled to find, either cognac or Armagnac, just to find like a good balance of all of that stuff. You just don't find it enough. But um so Stranahan's has a tenure now. Okay. I like to hear that. Yeah, they kind of seem to be one of the early ones that people really kind of were adapted to, or people that really kind of gravitated towards. Was it kind of seemed to be with some of their single malts that people were kind of into some of the Stranahan's pretty early on. But again, I'll say also that was like during the huge boom when everybody you could sell everything under the sun to whiskey lovers at that point. So, oh, Pete, eesh. If you don't like Pete, I actually would not recommend McCarthy's unless there is an updated. I am not. All right, if it's peated, I don't want to scratch that. Never mind. I'm good with that. It becomes such a dominant. It just becomes so dominant, even small amounts. I have an Irish whiskey that has like 2% peat in it. I think it was one of the two stacks. Actually, it was good, but I focused so much on that darn peat that it was like, oh my God, if it didn't have this in it, I felt like it would have been fantastic. But there's so many people that enjoy and love, peated scotches, that I get why they like it. It's something different, unique, and it's something that you have to, really just enjoy. So anyway, but man, we're already an hour and a half in. All right. Well, we can wrap it up here. We're almost an hour and a half in. Thanks everybody for tuning in tonight. It turned into a kind of a fun discussion with a lot of these things. And I knew reading a lot of the articles in the magazine that it would just be kind of some fun, interesting topics, and to get your perspective on these, kind of where a lot of these whiskeys land for you and your perspective. I knew it would be kind of a fun thing. So I like the peat, man. It is just not something. Um, oh, unpeated. All right, not updated. Okay, all right, got it. So I wasn't sure if that was something they were doing at the distillery or whatever it was. So, um, but anyway, thanks guys. I appreciate everybody for tuning in tonight and just kind of going along on this little kind of whiskey topic type of category stuff tonight. It was a lot of fun. I like doing some of these things, and if you guys think of it, I'd love to have some topics or some different things to maybe even do, or have some people on to kind of discuss, to do some of these things, because always trying to come up with some different ideas, or doing blinds. It's not something I always want to do, and I don't want to just subject you guys to just watching me drink a bunch of samples and stuff all the time. It just seems to become like a little monotonous, at least from my perspective. But if you have any suggestions, shoot me an email, Patreon, text, whatever, however you can get a hold of me, email, whatever it may be. I would appreciate it. But I'm going to start looking a little bit more ahead, and maybe try to get some guests on, talk to them about maybe some of their distilleries, whatever it may be, different perspective on some things as well. So again, like I said, if you have any suggestions or ideas, shoot them my way. I greatly appreciate it. But thanks again, guys. I appreciate everybody joining tonight. It was a fun discussion, and it's always good to catch up and see so many names, and I've fortunately been past couple years been able to put a lot of the faces with names. A few of them, I was gonna say like a couple of funny things, but I'll keep those jokes to myself. So, but anyway, thanks guys again. I appreciate all the support, and so again, for everything that I do, again, like I can't say thanks enough for again all the support, everybody in the club. We've got our backbone, our flux capacitor 2 releasing on Friday, so be aware of that. That will be dropping again on Friday, starting at 5 o'clock Eastern. And anyway, thanks guys, and we'll see you next Tuesday. And greatly appreciate everybody for joining tonight and all the support as always. So with that being said, and as I say, it's about the journey and not the destination. Cheers, guys. Have a great night. We will see you next Tuesday. Have a good night.